And welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with your host, Daniel.
And Daniel.
Wow, we're actually on time this for that response. Didn't have that delay.
It wasn't a delay, yeah.
And so any of our viewers who watch us just try to fight with our internet connection live right now. What one or both of our internets are just completely taking a dump, and we're doing a terrible job right now of streaming. Sorry about that. It's just out of our controls right now. We don't really know why it is. We're going to try a few other things to troubleshoot in following weeks, but for now, we're just recording and going with it.
Yeah, and at least it's still getting put up on our YouTube channel and our audio podcast platform as well. So content is still rolling out there. We just can't stream it live lately just because there's been a lot of internet issues.
That's right. So it is what it is, but we'll just jump into this episode. This is a neat one. We haven't done one of these in a long while, I don't think.
About a year, yeah. In fact, I think it's almost been a year.
Now, we're not talking about the top 8 debate, of course, because we've done plenty of those. What are we talking about?
The topic of the top 8 debate, we're actually breaking down games that were not created by anybody, that were not published by a certain group or is a mechanism, something like that. We're actually dissecting 8 games based off artwork, and this one is Chris Quilliams' art.
Yeah, we're a big fan of Chris Quilliams' art. He's done some really good stuff, and you'll recognize some of these titles. If you don't know his name immediately, that's fine. You will when we bring up the titles of the games, if you're at all into gaming at all. So we're looking forward to talking about these. It was a little tricky. He's an established artist for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But yet somehow it was kind of difficult for us to get honorable mentions.
Well, it's because he's established and he's prolific. There's a lot of games that he's done art for, but they're all series games, really. It's like the Century series or the Pandemic series. There's 3 games in that line. There's 3 in the Legacy, not to mention all the extra Pandemic games that are out there. And then you go also look at the Azul series. There's 3 in that line as well.
Yep, exactly. Pretty much everything for Next Move games, from what I could tell, and a lot for Plan B games. But I think that's because Plan B came off of, a lot of them came from Z-Man games, which he's also done a lot of art for.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's some really nice art, though. And it's an interesting take when you look at our top 8 debate here. It's a lot of art, but then you have like some full-on art, amazing art. Then you have some really abstractive art, and it's an interesting palette that he has here.
Yeah. And so we're going to have to figure out how we're going to approach. Normally we talk, you brought this up while we were discussing this earlier. Normally we say, how well does the theme match the mechanism? Well, as far as game immersion, how well does the art bring out the theme, I think is where we're probably going to go with that.
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah.
And again, when we go into the art and production side of things too, I mean, he created the art. Now, how are we going to judge that? It's all the same guy. It's just, does it work best for the game, or is it? I rate it is that the art. We already have the graphic design, which is fine, but I'm going to go with like the box art for myself when I'm breaking down this criteria, just because what's going to draw you in? What's that art that's going to be like, that looks amazing? That's the best way we can break it down because it's the same artist.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see how that works out. You ready to get into this?
Oh, I am. And normally we start with our audience's honorable mentions, but there are none.
Yeah, there are none. We'll talk about the comments here in a minute, but what are we breaking down? Let's go with our first one, our number 1 seed, a very familiar title with a lot of our debates, Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
And that will be going up against our 8 seed, Men at Work.
Our number 2 seed will be Great Western Trail. Now, we do want to clarify this real quick. We don't know if it's the first or the second one that he did the art for specifically. So we're just going to assume it's either.
Or both, for that matter.
Yeah. So
I think it's the new one that is the art because, again, that is Eggert Spiel and Plan B working together for that. So
yeah,
I'm assuming it's that one, but honestly, when we come down to these games, a lot of it is also just based on the mechanisms, not just the artwork. So we both have played Great Western Trail, so we're leaving it in for now.
Okay, that sounds good to me. We'll count it as the second one, and if it's not the artist, well, oh well. Know that we would have argued him as the first artist. And what is that going up against?
Our number 7 seed, Reef.
All right. Our number 3 seed, Azul.
We'll be going up against our 6 seed, Camel Up, 2nd edition.
And our number 4 seed, Carcassonne.
We'll be going up against our 5 seed, Century Golem edition.
Smooth transition. I'm sure there was no confusion then whatsoever. All right. So, yeah, we have some good breakdowns this time around. I mean, a lot of these are some of my favorite games of all time. So it's interesting to know.
This is your bracket, or this is your thing right here, because I would have to say, like, there's 3 games in here that are in your top, I don't know, 20?
Yeah.
Maybe 50?
Jeez, yeah. Carcassonne is definitely up there. Azul, oof. Yeah, it's probably up there pretty high. I was thinking about it.
Pandemic Season 1 almost upset Carcassonne, so...
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm actually kind of anxious to do my top 100 at some point. Coming pretty soon.
It'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, I have quite a few that I'm afraid will get knocked out because they're just all so good. But these are all up there for sure.
Yeah, so this is really a bracket for you here.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's go ahead and go back to our comments. Like we said, we didn't have any honorable mentions, but we certainly had a few people who talked about it. Kristen started off saying, mine would be Azul because I just love the mosaics so much, component quality and patterns.
Yeah, I can't disagree with her on that one. Azul's really nice. Tom says Golem and Century Golems are the best part of the game. They look amazing. And I can't disagree with him on that one as well.
Yeah. And
I think the
Chris
Golem
said,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And Chris said, I have Doris Mathias for Carcassonne. I think he was the original artist. The newer version from Z-Man, I believe, created the newer upgraded version from Chris Quilliams.
Nope, don't disagree with you on that one. Going back to the Century, the Golems edition, I think the Golem ones are the better looking of the Century editions, but he did the art for both editions.
Yeah, which is worth pointing out because Century Spice Road and the two predecessors from there actually make a panorama if you lay the boxes next to each other. The Golem edition doesn't do that, but
the first two does.
What's that?
The first two does. The rest of it doesn't.
Yeah, the first two do, which is strange that they didn't continue that, but it is what it is. I absolutely love the art that's in Century Spice Road, personally. It's not on my list because we are going to be debating the Century games, and they do work essentially the same, but I did want to specify that I personally prefer that, but I also like Dry Dusty Euros, so that's why.
No, I don't disagree with you on that. So I do have another Century game on my honorable mentions, but I'll get to that. This is actually difficult for me to get honorable mentions in the first place because, again, he does a lot of series. So when we're talking about Pandemic Season 1, he also did Season 0 and Season 2 and Vanilla and Iberia and all the Pandemics, really. The Century, he did both trilogies. Azul, he did all 3. So it's just like...
Yeah. Yeah, the only one that I saw that was listed as his is the Era Deluxe Edition. He was credited as an artist for that, but not as the artist for the original. So I'm not sure which one it is. It's not on my honorable mentions, but if I knew for certain that if he did art on the original, then it would have been up there.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that. And just for our audio listeners and our YouTube viewers, if you hear something in the background, it's just your 3D printers going on at the same time. So
I wasn't going to say it, but
yes. No, I have to make it because if I'm hearing it, they're going to hear it.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, there's some technical issues. I apologize. That's technically not a technical issue. Deal with it. So
I just say this has been a Monday.
It has been a Monday, absolutely. I still have about 4 or 5 more hours of work ahead of me, so we got to get through this. Let's do this.
All right, so
Time
let's
for the
start with the
top
honorable
debate.
mentions. Coin of Doom.
Yep, Coin of Doom. So, all right, I have my big Coin of Doom today.
What, a quarter?
You will be starting. No, it's a gold. It's a silver coin that says "to it" on it.
Oh, nice. All
For
right,
now
so
that I finally got around to it.
oh, okay,
To
yeah, okay.
finally,
That was bad.
yep.
All right, so again, honorable mentions were really hard for me to come up with because he does a lot of series arts. And so I decided there is one game that isn't part of the series that's on my list. It's going to be my last one. But these first two games are part of a series, and they're my favorite ones or ones I enjoy a little bit more, or that are in the list, actually. The first one being Azul Summer Pavilion. It's a great follow up to the other two Azuls. I really like this one. It's my favorite of the series. What I really like about it is the combo building that you're doing. You're trying to put the right ones out there. This way you can surround a certain thing to get a reward for that, or trying to finish a color off. This way you can get a reward for that. I love the little combos that you can do with how you're doing it based on your draft, which is pretty much just as good as in the other two games. It's a very sound game. I really, really enjoy it a lot. And like I said, it's my favorite of the series. Also, the mosaics and the colors. I see this one just as well as the original Azul, Azul, the second Azul, which is what, stained glass of Sintra. I have
Yeah,
issues with because I can't see some of the shapes on there, and so I just like the first Azul and the third Azul the best.
yeah. I do agree. Stained glass is probably my favorite of the three, just because the components are a little hard to see. I agree with that, but the art in it is my favorite as far as that's what I mean by favorite. It's my favorite art of the three. Then Azul number one, and then Summer Pavilion is last.
Really? See, I like Summer
Yeah.
Pavilion the most.
Well, as far as art goes, Summer. Ah, man. I mean, I really like the second one a lot. I like it more than a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah, see, I'm not a fan of it just because I have difficulty playing it. You can't really see the shape, so I don't really go out of my way to play that one. Because again, you and me have the same colorblind, but we're at different levels. You can see the stuff a lot better than I can. I can't see some of those shapes, and even
You know.
its colorblind friendly mode is not really colorblind friendly.
Yeah, exactly. You have to position the pieces in a weird. Yeah, it's bizarre. They did what they could. That's about all we can say.
Yeah.
My number three is an honorable mention because I'm pretty certain he did both versions of the art, but I know he definitely did at least one version. That's 5211. It's a card game that really only had to have the art because every card has either a number from 1 to 6 or like a symbol is the one, but 2 to 6, and then it's just whatever color it is. Didn't need anything other than that. It could have just been a plain blank card that was a single color. That was it. But no, they wanted to make it really nice. In fact, they even put on giant size jumbo cards, like tarot size at least, and then they added the Azul art to like a newer version of it. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's a fun game on top of it. I just got to figure out like how the numbers work out. It seems a little weird how they end up, but mostly it's a solid game. That's 5211.
Yeah, no, you keep talking about this one. I knew once I saw it on the list that it would hit your honorable mentions. I do need to try this one. You keep talking about it, and it seems like a really fun game to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going on to my second honorable mention is another game in a series. Now, I don't like this more than the first one, and that's why I had to catch myself when I said it. But I have played it, and this one's the Century Golem Eastern Mountains. I think it's one of the most beautiful series created. That's Century Golem Eastern Mountains, and Endless World is a third one. I should be getting that in the mail here pretty soon. But I like this one because it has a beautiful take on a pick up and deliver game where you're just moving around the mountains. You're trying to collect things and turn things in to get your points, and most points at the end of the game win. But it's the thing about Emerson Matsuchi, the guy who created this one and the original Century as well, is that he simplifies mechanisms so easily and boil it down to like its simplest level, and it's still such a good game. It kind of reminds me of like like a modern Reiner Knizia in a sense, where he takes an idea and then he boils it down to as simple as possibly can be. And the Century, all the both Century series, I have played the worker placement in Century Brave New World, the original Century, and that is one of the there's a lot to it, moving parts, but it's still so simple and easy to grasp it. After a round, you're like, oh, okay, I get what I'm doing. And same thing with Eastern Mountains, or what is the equivalent in the original Century? What's it called? The second one?
I don't remember off the top of my head. Eastern Wonders.
Eastern Wonders, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's Eastern Wonders. And both of them are very good. Pick or choose which one you want to get. I went with the Century Golem series. I just like the art better in that one, even though it's a bit more fantastical compared to the Spice Roads. It's just also easier for me to see too, because Century Spice Road is browns and greens and all that jazz, where this one's a bit more colorful. So that helps me out a lot too. But Century Golem Mountain, Eastern Mountains.
Cool. My number 2 is another small little card game. One that I didn't realize he did the art for, but he is credited for. So I don't know if it's a different version or what, but it's a simple trick-taking game that pretty much rules everybody's top 10 lists. And that is Tichu.
Didn't we talk about this? I think we talked about this on the last top 8 debate.
I think so. And that's because it's a neat game. The art on it does look like a classic playing card style, but then at the same time it almost looks like it's combined with Mahjong. What they needed to do it. They wanted to make it Asian themed, and they wanted to make it look like Mahjong tiles meets playing cards, and that's exactly what it does. It doesn't need to do anything different, and that's why I picked it for my list. My number 2, Tichu.
I never played that, so I can't really argue the point. Hopefully it's good. I haven't tried it. And finally, my number 1 here is the actual only game that I've played that isn't part of a series that he has on there, that I can find anyways. And I think it may be on your list because you're a big fan of this one, and that is Hot Shots from Fire.
I'm going to stop you right there, because my number 1 is Hot Shots. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's an awesome game.
No, it is an amazing game. I like the fact that it's a push your luck, and I talk about this a lot on the crew. When I bring up the crew, is where it's a thing where you're trained that it's not a co-op game where the crew is trick taking, whereas this one is push your luck. You're not used to that in the co-op, but how you have to do it is quite smart. Is like, do I push my luck to help out here, or do I go over there and share what I can to help this person at that area? Do we split the party? Do we try to keep an eye on all these fires? I think what it does is amazing. I don't own my copy anymore just because my wife is just not a huge fan of push your luck aspect kind of game, so it didn't get played a lot. But I really enjoyed it. I think it's one of the best co-ops that have come out of Fireside Games. Mm-hmm. And that's saying something, because Castle Panic is their big baby, and I, as much as I love Castle Panic's, Hot Shots is right up there with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of Castle Panic, let's give a shout out real quick to our friend. I know this will be showing in a couple weeks from now, but our friend Justin DeWitt, owner of Fireside Games and designer of Castle Panic, they're running a Kickstarter right now for their Castle Panic Deluxe. So if you like Castle Panic, or if you like co-ops, tower defense, anything like that, go check that out. I'm going to give them a shout out.
Our audio and YouTube listeners, this when this goes up, it'll currently be up, because I think it launches as of recording tomorrow, which is the next week is the 11th. Yeah, so today's the 10th, right?
Today's the 10th, so on tomorrow.
Tomorrow. And so as of recording is the 10th. When this goes up, it'll be on for at least a week by then.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? Apparently they have a couple different tiers. They have like just a deluxe upgradable version, like a regular cardboard version. But then they also have a wooden version, which is like wooden tokens and stuff. And then they have the plastic miniatures version. And if you already have like the Castle Panic Deluxe, you can like upgrade it and get other pieces for it. Dude, it looks slick. I'm looking forward to it.
No, it looks pretty good.
But Hot Shots, though, that if you got tired of Castle Panic and you're like, man, I really want a good co-op, but I'm just like tired of playing Castle Panic, Hot Shots is the upgrade to that. It is
Oh yeah.
absolutely how it works.
And honestly, I consider them almost on the same level where it's simple enough to learn and teach, but
Hmm.
it's still difficult to play the game because of the co-op aspect of it. There is some difficulty to it. And I love that. I love the fact that there's still easy to learn co-op games that you could teach to like family members and stuff like that who don't game.
Well, what makes it so brilliant, in my opinion, is the combination of cooperative and press your luck. I
Hmm.
mean, in a lot of press your luck games, like we've talked about this in like in Quacks and Quedlinburg, when we're always like, come on, keep going, the egging on. No, we're in this together. It's like, I mean, I don't want you to, but everybody's like, we really need you to push your luck and just don't roll
Yeah.
badly. That's all you got to do. Like, otherwise, you're a failure to all of
Yeah.
us, not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
you. I think that brings out
You're,
such a
you're you're
cool
you're
game.
not just hurting yourself by pushing your luck. You're hurting us all. So calm down. Roll
Yeah,
better.
everybody just roll better, and then we'll be fine. That's all you got to do. I think that's brilliant. That's why I like that
No,
game so much.
it is a really good game. I enjoy it. Like I said, it just didn't get played a lot here, so I'm just trying to limit what I keep in what stays and stuff like that. So if I want to
Yep,
play it, I can borrow your copy, or we can play your copy.
that's true. It's true. You absolutely can. Maybe if you ask nice enough.
Yeah, it's fine.
Anyway, let's get on to the debate. How do we break down these debates? We break it down into 5 different categories, and each game will be ranked on those 5 categories. The first one, which is kind of moot at this one, and I'm going to bring it up, and that's art and production. And normally we rank it based on the art quality of the art, which is going to be a wash for most of these, I imagine. The
Yeah.
graphic design, how well that helps you play the game. Is it iconography heavy? Does it have a bunch of weird, obscure symbols that nobody knows? All sorts of things there. And then finally, the production. What is the production quality on the game itself?
Yeah, the components, the boards, are they flimsy pieces of cards? The cards really nice if it's a card game, that sort of stuff. The next topic we're going to talk about here is the ease of play. That's one of the main ones we do, and that is just the likelihood of getting it to the table, whether it's the theme or the mechanism. The prone to what we call analysis paralysis, where it's going to make the game grind to a halt, and the simplicity and familiarity of the mechanism. How likely are you to play it because you're familiar? If it's a worker placement, how likely are you going to play it if it's a worker placement?
Yep. And our next one is meaningful choices. Meaningful choices is specifically how well can you impact your future strategy of the game? How well are you able to impact the strategy of others? And finally, how likely are you to make arbitrary choices? That also includes if all of your options are good, well, then technically none of them are good because they're all just as good as everything else. So even
Yeah.
though it's still fun, can I just shuffle my hand of cards, pick a card, and have just as much of a chance as anybody else?
One of the next categories that we have here is replay value, the time and the scaling well of the game, the minimum number of plays to get the full experience of said game, as well as the expandability. Does it already have existing expansions, up to one possible future expansions that we believe that could happen, or if they've been confirmed by the designer or publisher to be coming out?
And finally, game immersion, which normally we ask, how well does the theme match the mechanisms? Today, we're going to ask you, how well does that art bring out the theme of the game?
Yeah.
Then, which games give you those table talk, like stand up, oh my god moments, that memorable moments? And then finally, how well does the theme of the game and the mechanisms bring you to want to play the game and get into the world of the character of the game characters themselves?
Exactly. And finally, when all that's said and done, if somehow we're still in a tie, that's why it's important we put these polls up on the Board Game Revolution community on Facebook. It's the fan vote. They are the tiebreaker. Whichever is the highest will move on, whichever is the lowest is eliminated.
That's right. So, Daniel, are you ready to get into this?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Yep. Hopefully, we won't have any more technical issues.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. So, as always, I flip the coin of doom. Daniel will flip the cup of doom. Daniel will choose from the cup of doom one of the two that are available,
I, I,
and
I,
that's
I
what
don't
we
want
debate
to.
for.
I don't want to flip the Cup of Doom. It's already got a crack in it. It's one of my favorite mugs.
Well, I'm sorry. You'll have to get a chicken mug like Rado uses. The Cup of Doom. All right, so our first one is going to be Pandemic Legacy versus Men at Work. And our first round goes to me. I will start our debate.
And you get the 8 seed, Men at Work.
We could dance if we want to. We can. All right, I had to do it. I don't think I sang enough where we'll get copyright thing, but you know.
YouTube doesn't even know we existed, so we should be fine.
Yeah, that's fine. We're not in the algorithm. What is this? We don't do this for money. Clearly.
Clearly.
No, Men at Work is super cool. It's one of the best, hands down, dexterity games. I still have it in my collection. I'm gonna have it for a really long time, because what it does specifically is it takes the cards and tells you you need to move certain pieces, whether it be add workers or add pieces or foundations. There's so many large varieties of pieces, and they're all really great quality. The first ones are like the wooden blocks, which are like the foundations, which are concrete colored. That's on purpose. Then you have these meeples with like little rubber hard hats that are on there, and they're actually much larger than normal meeples.
Yeah.
And that's because they can hold up bricks and logs that they're able to carry. Then you have larger beams, which are quite a bit long, like almost 12 inches, it seems. They're significant. Those are in 4 different colors. And then you have all sorts of just other things like girders. You have all these great pieces. Oh, even so much that you have like a crane that can sit right in the middle of everything and just kind of block everything. And you have a ruler, which is pretty neat, where when pieces fall down, it's the next player's turn to try and maneuver them out and play a little dexterity game to keep the rest of the game from falling over. Oh my goodness, it's hilarious. When you have like these little safety record tokens that when you drop pieces, you lose one of your safety certificates, and whoever has the most at the end, or whenever all but one player is eliminated, whoever still has safety certificates because of all the people falling from the structure. It's hilarious. It really adds themes. It's easily the most thematic dexterity game.
It really is. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's more thematic than, Loop and Louie, or more thematic than Rhino Hero, or more thematic than Crokinole. It obviously, because Crokinole doesn't have a theme. But I mean, it does make sense. You're building a structure. You're sending these people out there. There's safety hazards that you have to deal with, and it's just an absolute mad architect. Now,
would you say it's more thematic than Terror in Meeple City?
Yes. Yes. Because of the dropping the dinosaurs onto the building. I mean, I get like the Smash part. You have to do something and flicking it around, and that's where you move, because they're just chaotic things. But yeah, I would say more thematic than Terror in Meeple City. And a better production value. And a better production value, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with you on that. Barely, but yeah.
But since we're talking Chris Quilliams art, first off, the cover is amazing on it. I love the cover.
Gotta stop using that hand signal.
Huh?
Gotta stop using that hand signal.
What hand signal? What are we talking about here? What happened? Oh, gotcha. Okay. Anyway, so the art on the cover is amazing, but then all of the graphic design and the art in the game itself, like the cards that flip over, if you're going to be using certain pieces. The iconography is very clear. It explains everything, and everything just looks really solid. Granted, it had to be a good production value too, but the art on it doesn't leave it behind.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I think it's just when we're talking about it compared to, say, Pandemic Season 1, there's just not a lot of art to argue. The game is sound. Don't get me wrong. I like Men at Work. I think it's a phenomenal dexterity game, probably one of the better ones. But it's also going up against one of the best games that ever came out in the last 10 years, and that's Pandemic Legacy Season 1. The fact of the matter is, this game was the #1 game for quite a while before Gloomhaven came out and just smacked it around a little bit. But what this game did was take something that was already a solid game and put a campaign to it and made a story, and then you throw his art into Pandemic Season 1 too, and it's just really nice, especially a lot of the stuff you're seeing out there. How much his art itself affects the game, I'm not really sure, because mind you, he did the same art for Pandemic, the vanilla, and so there's that as well. But if I were to argue which is the better game out of the two, I would say Pandemic Season 1. But we're arguing
Yeah,
the actual better art as well, then I would have to say maybe Men at Work, just because of that box cover. That is an amazing box cover that will draw you in. You see it at the shelf, on a shelf at the store, and or at the FLGS, and you're like, wow, that looks good. What game is this? What is this all about?
yeah. I do agree with you, and as well as the components set up on the board, it's going to be there. But I think what really takes it home, and if we're talking specifically Chris Quilliams art, is that everything that's on the board, there's like little things that are just like spread on the board, and it looks like they're real items that are there on this map that you're sitting
Mm-hmm.
there. All of the graphic design is really first rate on there. Everything
And
is really clear as what you're trying to do, and all of the theme of the game is really brought out by drawing these cards that are mostly text, yes, but they look like folders and top secret things and hidden items, and it just looks super neat.
yeah, no, I don't disagree with
You
you
right
on
there?
that. It's just, huh?
You all right there? You went,
My neighbor.
oh, okay. I didn't hear it, but I assume it's hilarious.
It was just a loud bang that I wasn't expecting. But honestly, if you go back on that too, I didn't even think about this. It's a legacy game. Those who haven't played a legacy game, I'm sorry, slight spoiler a little bit. But the stickers that go on the board that you're putting on stuff like that too, the fact that he made some of the art and graphic design for those as well makes that game really stand out to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, I think you and I are in agreement then. Not much debate here. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 moves on.
Yep.
All right, on to the next round. We have Great Western Trail versus Reef.
Now there is an asterisk on this one. We're not exactly sure which one is his art per se. I don't know if
Right.
it's the Stronghold version or the new one that's coming out or is out. I don't know when it's supposed to be out. By what it is, Spiel, which is owned by Plan B now, which he does a lot of artwork for. So we're going based off of that cover that we've seen, as well as how the game plays itself. So,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah,
already know how
definitely.
you feel about this one.
Yeah, we'll discuss it. All right.
Who's going?
So, Daniel, you'll be starting us off.
And I get Great Western Trail.
Good deal. I can agree with that.
So, Great Western Trail, I know there was issues. One, it was a game we learned late at night that after already an all day of gaming. So there is a bit of that, and I didn't have the rules down pat when I taught it. I'll admit that freely. I've tried to. I've read the book or the rule book like 4 or 5 times and watched a couple playthroughs of it. But there's a lot going on in that game. As an ease of play, this is not touching Reef when it comes to ease of play. Reef is just going to destroy it in that one category alone. But I like the game. I think it's a phenomenal game. It's a fun game to play. Alexander Pfister, I could see why some people say he's not as streamlined that they would hope he would be. A lot of his games, so has me a little iffy on getting Maracaibo to the table. I do want to get that one to the table because I heard really good things about it. But I really enjoyed it. I like what's going on. I like the fact that you're moving the cowboys and you're trying to use the buildings, or you may have to pay your opponents and stuff like that. The building rule could be a little bit clearer on how you're supposed to put those buildings out. And that's why I'm hoping the new game comes out, is the rulebook's a little bit easier and cleaner to read. And honestly, I don't blame the game itself, because Terraforming Mars rulebook is not all that straightforward. And that's also another Stronghold game, because I got the Stronghold, or the what used to be the Stronghold version of the game. And so basically they just took like the rulebook and everything, reprinted it on Eggerspiel before they decided to do the second edition. And so that rule book is a chore to read. But when going to the game itself, there's a lot of good stuff going for it. It does have one expansion that we know of. Does lend itself to a lot of good, meaningful choices about how you're going to, what buildings you're going to put out, how you're going to use the cost and spend and how you're going to do all this sort of stuff. But if I had to pick between the two, I think Reef is just a cleaner design and much more beautiful.
Okay. Well, then there you have it. Reef is moving on. No, I'm saying no. And I know why you give all that preface right at the beginning, and that's because we had a very frustrating first time playing it.
Yeah.
Myself mainly, but that did not lock out Andreas Pfister or Alexander Pfister for me. And in fact, I have a couple of games of his on my shelf of shame ready to go, and and I was going into it also rather excited because I knew I was like, oh, it's a good heavy crunchy Euro, and it's Western theme. Which, believe it or not, I love the Western theme. I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
been a fan of movies, but there's something about like having a Western theme in a game that just doesn't happen that often. And coming off of Western Legends, which was really just a fantastic game.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, a Euro version, like a heavy, crunchy Euro version of a Western. Think about the possibilities. And then, like when we're still getting rules wrong, like 4 hours in, we're like, oh god, we should just
Yeah.
what we should have done realistically. And I'm not saying anything bad about you, Daniel, and I don't want it to sound that way. Is we should have just stopped after hour one and just go, you know what? Let's just chop the
Yeah.
block right here. Like let's pick a different one. Let's revisit this.
Yeah, even with
Because then
the roll flubs, me and the other person were really enjoying this game.
yeah, and I didn't hate it. I was just really frustrated at it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and it was one of those experiences where it's like Elder Sign or Eldritch Horror. When we played that, oh, I hated that game. That was awful. But this one, like, I didn't hate it. It's just like it was like, oh man, like I wish I knew how to do this. I wish I knew what this was about. And then it was just because of the rules. And so I'm not going to hold that against the game. I trust that it's pretty good. But yeah, that's what it is. I think it's worth trying again, and I'd be willing to try it again. Not that late at night. That's all it is.
Yeah, if anything, it's got to be like one of the first games when we're all sharp and ready to go. Not after we
Yeah.
played, what, 5 or 6 other games before that?
5 hefty games before it, yeah. And I think I probably played like the shortest or taught the shortest game at like an hour or something. Like it was still pretty intense. But either way,
Yeah, because Red Rising wasn't that much longer either. That was only an hour or so.
yeah, it seemed longer just because of how much we had to read. But it
Yeah.
wasn't. I enjoyed that one a lot. But yeah, I'm willing to try it again. But let's talk about Reef though, because that's really what I'm going to be presenting. Reef, yeah, it's a super clean design. It is Emerson Matsuuchi, and the whole premise of it, it's essentially a abstract game where you play a card, add some pieces on a certain pattern on your board, and then try and score other cards that are in your hand. You have to find a way to do that though, because you're going to be putting your cards in a certain order, going, okay, I'm going to do this, which will score this one, then I'll play this one, which will score this one. But then you always forget that one little thing. It's like, oh, well, it's going to score this one, but wait, no, I have to put these somewhere. Oh, now I have to change my mind all of a sudden. And I think that's a really brilliant idea of like, how am I going to combo these things together to score time and time again and maximize the number of points? So it's super cool. I do think it has the better art of the two, because we just haven't seen technically the full art for Great Western Trail, the new one.
And in all
But
honesty, if we're going based off the old one, that art is just horrendous. They all look constipated.
yeah,
To
exactly.
the point, we didn't even call the engineer. He was the magician.
Yeah, he was the magician. That's why I went for. That's absolutely right. Yeah, the engineer, the man with the top hat. I mean, he was either the oil baron from Charlie Chaplin films, or he's a magician. He's an illusionist. That's the only thing they can be. Like you can't be an engineer and wear a top hat like that. It just doesn't work. That's not how science is. But I think Reef is just a cleaner design. It is a better game. Out of all of the Emerson Matsuuchi games I've played, it's probably one of his lowest ranked ones, actually, believe it or not. But like, I'm not the biggest fan of that as much as others, but I do like it.
I can't disagree with you on that. Excuse me. Just because.
Bless you.
Sorry, I aspirated a little bit. because you look at like the Emerson Matsuchi stuff. I've played the Century series, Reef, but I also played the one he did with the Hidden Betrayer one. I can't remember the name of it.
I don't remember
That
either.
Plaid Hat released, but I forget what it's called. But that was actually a really fun game. It's basically their version of Fury of Dracula that plays in less time.
Oh yeah, which is always a good thing. If you can
Oh
get
yeah.
just as much fun as a game that's big and heavy and like condense it into like a small little can of soup, you're on the right path. So that's Reef is moving on.
Yep, I can't disagree with that at all. So our next
Very
one
cool.
is Azul versus Camelot.
Ooh, that's a tricky one. Camelot Second Edition. So, Daniel,
Spectre
are
Ops.
you ready?
Just to let you know, the game is called Spectre Ops. I had to look it up.
Oh yes, yeah, Spectre Ops. Okay, you had to look it up. Gotcha. All right, so
It's going to drive me
Azul
insane.
versus Camelot.
And I'm leading?
And Daniel, I'll be starting this one.
Got it.
This coin has a nice ring to it. Let me give that another satisfying. I don't know if you guys can pick it up on hearing it,
Well,
but
guess what you get?
it's fun. Azul. Is there really any argument? Both of these are Spiel winners. One of them deserves it. No, I mean I like Camelot a lot. I really do. But Azul is just phenomenal. It is one of the
That's
best
one of
games
us.
of all time. Huh?
That's one of us.
What, you're not a fan of Camelot?
Not really. It's not my. I'm not a huge fan of racing games to begin with, and
Yeah.
Camelot. I understand it, but some like the mechanisms, like the camels on top, the ones on top is leading. It's just a bit confusing to me how things are going. I know you're placing your bets as well, but yeah, no. Camelot is not one of my favorite games. In fact, it's probably my least favorite on this list now that I'm looking at it.
Yeah, honestly, it's down there as well for me. I've enjoyed the mess out of it. I have played it a lot. The wife likes it, and then ever since I bought it for her, she's never played it. It's really a quality game in our family. But I mean, we like it. But there are a lot of other racing games that we just would rather play. I
Yeah.
get why it won the Spiel, but at the same time, I don't know if it was just that year.
Yeah, I have to say though the art on the second edition is beautiful. It's really nice looking.
Yep.
Much better than the art on the first edition, where you're not just trying to see is it Camel Up or Camel Cup, and where everybody's making that argument. They clarified, hey, it's Camel Up. The production value of it is actually really well done with the pyramid and stuff like that. But it's just it's not something I enjoy playing. I mean, you showed it to me, and I was just like not enamored with it. I wasn't having fun.
Yep. So this is going to be a very quick round. Guess what moves on? Azul.
Yeah. Not surprising on that either.
Nope, but we'll have more arguments with Azul later. Don't worry. And our last round of the quarterfinals is Carcassonne versus Century Golem. Ooh, this is tricky. Let's give it a satisfying plunk. Ready? I'll be starting this one. I better get Carcassonne.
Well, you didn't because you got Century.
Oh, no. All right, I concede that. No, I'm just kidding. No, Century, like I said, I prefer Century Spice Road. That's a minor thing. He did the art for both of them. Both of them were beautiful. But let's talk about the function of the game. It's heavily influenced by... There was a game back in the 60s called Bazaar that I really like, and I've made this comparison before, where the idea is you're converting these goods in different ways, and you're trying to be very efficient with it. In this game, I don't even know if he based it off of Bazaar or not, but I believe it if he'd had. Emerson Matsuchi, again, brilliant designer. He took this game, and you're building a small engine. You can either get 2 yellow cubes or blue gems or whatever the basic ones are, or you can upgrade them to the next level up. There's 4 levels of cubes, and there's different cards that you can get it. Now, the way the engine works is absolutely amazing. You play these cards, or you can take your turn and just pass and take your cards, all of them back to your hand, or you can buy a card. If you buy a card, you put down any number of cubes and or gems onto the previous cards that are in the row, and those are available for the next player to pick up. You can put some expensive gems on it if you want, or you could just take the card that is at the front of the row for free. It's absolutely brilliant. I love the way that works. Is you're taking those cards in your hand, building this awesome engine. It's the same idea with Reef, except every card you play is just boom, boom, boom. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. Super fast game. Everybody enjoys the mess out of it every time you play it. And yeah, I think it has every right to be on here as one of the top ranked games. But then Chris Quilliams' art really just does it justice. This game was built off of the art.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that. And that's the reason why it's actually one of the more popular games out there out of the century because of that art. That's what draws people in. In fact, I've heard people say they'd rather play the Golem edition because the art is just so much nicer than the original edition. And that's for a lot of people, not just me. I've heard a lot of people say that. So, but when it comes down to it, as much as I like Century Golem Edition, Carcassonne, there's just something about this game. I won't play with you, but that's beside the point. Carcassonne is such a clean game about what it's doing, and the art is really nice, especially on the tiles when you're trying to figure out how you're going to place this city tile, and you could just see the little things in the city, the buildings and stuff like that inside that city, and just it's so small, but yet it looks so beautiful. Now, I was going to say realistic. It doesn't really look realistic at all. And some of the scoring aspect of it is meh. But I mean, come on, when we're going to like art and production, this produced something that is a mainstay in board games, the meeple.
Yep.
And so with that alone, the historical aspect of that alone, I think Carcassonne is one of the best games. Out of these two, I would pick Century Golem, but I think, in all honesty, Carcassonne should move on.
In all fairness, I'm willing to break it down by the categories just so I can take my bias out of it. I am perfectly willing to do that. Which one do you feel is easier to play?
Century Golem.
Why is that?
It boiled down to play some cards, collect some gems, or pick up your cards. That's really all.
Yeah. The only counter argument is that the Carcassonne is just simply place a tile, and you have to align it with things that match. Like there's every kid understands you play dominoes.
That's easy, and I get that part where you're talking about. But when you get down into the nitty gritty and the actual scoring, I think it's the farmers that really make it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. Because you got to make sure the farmer is feeding this city, and they got to be completed cities, and there can't be someone else laying in there. And so, like for new gamers, especially the first time I ever played Carcassonne, that was one of the hardest things to grasp was where I should put my farmer down if I want to get points. Would it work here? Would it work here? And stuff like that. That's in it. The way it works, that's a bit complicated. Where Century Golem is, yes, play a card, you collect some tokens to buy some stuff. That's really all it is. I think it's just easier to play.
Okay. All right. That's fair. We'll go with that then. And art and production.
This is tough. This is a tough one for me because they're both really nice on the art style itself. The cards are really beautiful in Century Golem. Really nice art in that one. The gems are really nice. The trays are a little meh, but the gems are really nice in that game.
Although the cups that are in the other version, those are fantastic.
Yeah, but we're not arguing that version. We're arguing this version. Correct. The tiles are really nice in Carcassonne. So the art is really tough when you break it down because these are both really, really good games with art. If I had to choose just on the art alone, I would say Century Golem just because there's a lot more of it. Now, when you go down into the graphic design, it works better in in Carcassonne.
Meaningful choices. I would argue Carcassonne.
Yeah, no, I'll give you meaningful choices hands down. Because you have to play smart with your meeples and determine where they're going to go and when you're going to deploy them. Because once you run out, you're pretty much out of meeples until something scores for you.
Game immersion. Now that is actually based. I would say Carcassonne is in game immersion because neither of them really have stand-up moments at all. Like they're really just you play it until the end and that's it. But game immersion, just because of the theme matching the mechanism, the art is absolutely necessary in Carcassonne. And if you didn't have quality art that you understand, like what is inside of a city versus outside, where do the roads connect, then the game is non-functional. So I feel like as far as the or how well does the art help the game experience, absolutely. And especially like when you close off a city, or when you build that final path and you connect multiple roads or the farms and stuff. I feel like that gets really exciting when you do that, to a way where multiple people, you've said it yourself, you don't play this game with me anymore because I was able to manipulate it that way. And you bring it up every time we talk about Carcassonne, and
manipulate it.
that's a memorable moment. I would say
And
Immersion
no,
is
I don't.
Carcassonne.
Honestly, I don't disagree with you. I see Century, especially the first one in the game, more of a filler / shorter game. Like you could play in 30, 40 minutes, if that. You could play, especially if you're playing with people who are very familiar with Century Golem. It's very quick. It's boom, boom, boom. This is what I'm doing. You're done in 20 minutes. And so that doesn't lend itself to really big, memorable moments. It's a good game and it's fun to play, but it's more filler or very lightweight compared to like heavy thinking and stand-up moments when it comes to it. So I don't disagree with you. And then, of course, finally, replay value. That's going to go to Carcassonne hands down.
Yep. It scales. It can play more players. It has more expansions. Minimum number of plays is we might give that like the base to Century, but really that's just barely. So Carcassonne moves on.
Yep. And it's going to go up against Azul, so you have an entire bracket where you're going to go insane.
And well, Carcassonne is also a Spiel winner, and that's worth pointing out.
Azul was nominated, wasn't it?
Azul won.
No, Century. Never mind. Century, the original one, was nominated, right?
I don't think it was even nominated.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, which it should have been, honestly. I feel like it very well would have earned the right to be in that.
Honestly, it's better than Splendor, and wasn't Splendor nominated?
Yes. But that's just an opinion. Some people still like Splendor. This guy. I'm the one.
Yeah.
Anyway, on to our semifinals. But first, how many votes did they get from our viewers?
All right, so let's find out here. The first one eliminated was Men at Work, and it was tied for last place with 1.
Oof.
That's followed up by Great Western Trail, which was eliminated by Reef, and that was our number 1 vote getter at 25. Next up on our line here is Camel Up, which was eliminated by Azul. Camel Up was actually towards the bottom. It was our 5th best vote getter, and that's saying something because we had 2 ties in this one, and it only had 6 votes. And finally, the last one eliminated was Century Golem Edition, and that one was our 4th best vote getter. It was actually one of the ties, and it had 10.
That's right. All right. Very good. Glad that that didn't just because, you'll see later on. Our next one will be Pandemic versus Reef. Daniel, are you ready for this bracket?
I am.
Because you'll be starting us off.
If I can get one of these
Which
out.
one's your early favorite? Which one are you hoping for?
Well, it's not the one I got.
Well, all right. Argue Reef.
All right, so the thing about Reef is it's a beautiful game. Don't get me wrong. It's probably one of the best ones with his art on there, colorful-wise. Century Golem, I think, is just a tad bit more on the colorful side and makes sense. Compared to Reef, Reef is just shapes and colors, and you're trying to put them on your board. It's a phenomenal game. I enjoyed playing it, but out of the 4 that are going here, I don't think it's going to move past this round. It's going up against a juggernaut, and even if it goes into the next round, it's going up against another juggernaut. I don't know if it could keep scaling this mountain when it comes down to it. The only category I would really give to Reef is ease of play, and that's not really saying too much because, honestly, Pandemic is not that hard to learn and play. It even tells you play just basic Pandemic the first couple of times. This way you get the mechanisms down pat. But it's not that hard. You just shuffle some cards up, draw some bad stuff. You make your 4 actions, and you draw some bad cards and see where it goes. It's pretty simple. But Reef is a bit simpler. Other than that, as much as the artwork is really nice in Reef, it doesn't lend itself to the actual gameplay like Pandemic does. When again we're talking about like the stickers that are going on the board and how these are interacting, or some of the way the graphic design is and the little art on there and the way the cards are working, the All Quiet Night and that sort of stuff. And not to mention the player character art as well, because it looks like a file. It looks like your character file, and you're adding in stuff to that as well. And it's just, it becomes something that looks very basic. And as you're going through the series or the season, through the months to play, it just adds and becomes more and more, and it becomes more beautiful. And it's a phenomenal game. And honestly, Reef just doesn't give you those stand-up moments like Pandemic would. Doesn't give you those meaningful choices out there that Pandemic does, as well as the replay value. Yeah, you could probably have an expansion to Reef. I don't know if it does, but when you're trying to get when we're talking about the most gameplay, to get the full experience, you have to play the campaign to get the full experience of what this thing is doing, because you don't know what's going to come up. You don't know what boxes you're going to open or what's going to happen. We all know that one thing who have played the game where you're just like, oh my God, what kind of situation. You're not going to get that in something like Reef. You're not going to get that in something like Carcassonne or Azul, for that matter, either. That's why Pandemic is just, it's going to be a tough one to beat because of those stand-up moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. I know you were trying to argue for Reef, but just take whatever you said about Pandemic and
Oh, that's right. I did get Reef.
Saying it.
My bad.
Whoops. No, that's okay. Just imagine my amazing, deep voice talking about Pandemic Legacy, but just supplement everything you just said. I'll just give a preview. Pandemic Legacy Season 1.
Yeah, my brain just
add in that.
My brain just decided Reef is not worth it.
Wow, that's like almost an insult to anybody who likes Reef. No, I agree.
And I'm sorry for that.
It is what it is. I mean, out of all of the series, so Next Move Games has the whole series of where it's just 4 letters. So it's Azul is part of it. Reef was the following up. Tukey was after that. This is my second least favorite.
I guess Tukey's your least favorite?
Yeah, I don't really like the speed sacking. It can do some fun stuff, but really, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it.
Yeah, I drew like that. I drew Reef. It's just, I really like Pandemic Season 1, in all honesty.
Yeah, it's worth going on. I completely agree with you. And it does better at Chris Quilliams' art, in my opinion. Just because of the graphic design and all the little subtleties and everything. Yeah. It's not as obviously pretty, but it is still really pretty.
You're surprised once you get down into it in the nitty-gritty. I'm like, you know what? You're right. Yeah, it does a lot of things. Because you said it in the first time we argued this, how the graphic design works and how it goes to town.
Yeah, it has to. Like the stickers, they have to make sense when you're putting it on, especially when you have that many across the board. They got to function, and that's a really important thing. Our next one will be Azul versus Carcassonne, Battle of the Spiel winners.
And battle of some of your favorite games.
Yep. Two of my favorite games. And you will be arguing this round.
All right. Let's see. I got Carcassonne. I'm going to argue for Carcassonne.
All right, so go ahead and argue for Azul, and then we'll just assume I did.
All right. So going into this, Carcassonne is probably the better game out of the two. I'm not saying that much, and it's just for my memory of Azul is once you figure out that pattern and how things are going to go, you're taken out of the game. My wife is case in point of that. She does not like Azul because she figured out the pattern. She's like, yeah, it's all right. It's kind of boring, but it's fine. And then so I'm like, okay, we'll play on the difficult side where, it's blank and you have to put those in there by your own choice. She's like, nope, I cracked the code. We're good. I'm done. And she destroyed me in that game. And so she's just not a fan of it. And I can see where she's coming from. And for me personally, I'd rather play Stubborn Pavilion than regular Azul. But as we go into Carcassonne itself, I think the expandability on it is just amazing. There's 10 expansions or so. We've talked about this a lot, and I can't even remember. There's so many expansions for Carcassonne, to the point where Z-Man released everything in like a big box, and then of course you got that map thing that I saw. What was it? It was Rodney Smith actually? Huh?
This is the USA map specifically.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, they have that map, and there's another one, right? I think a European map or something like that.
Oh, there's a whole bunch. Yeah, Europe, Germany.
Yeah, so there's a lot going for it.
France.
I think the art is better. Chris Quilliams' art is better on this one as well. Though that box cover on Azul is amazing. I cannot deny that's going to draw you in just how pretty it is. But because Carcassonne's box cover, even with Z-Man, is just a bit generic for an older game. It's fine, but they didn't update it all that well. Though that 20th edition box cover is beautiful.
Absolutely. I did pre-order it. I am looking forward to it very soon.
All right.
Once again, I feel it's only fair to break these down after I make my argument. But Carcassonne is simpler to play, and I feel there's a lot of depth to it. But the way the mechanisms work in Azul is absolutely fantastic.
The drafting is like the best thing, honestly.
Yep, the drafting is absolutely brilliant because you of course want to go for the most of something, but that doesn't mean it's worth your time.
Mm-hmm.
It might be worth going for 2 or even 1 tile, depending on if it makes sense. Because if you take a single tile and you dump those others, well, then that does change other people's strategy. Because if I only needed 2 of the reds and you dumped a 3rd one in there, is it worth me getting a negative point to crack that tile and take an additional one? It's absolutely phenomenal in how it works. So I think it's worth breaking down. Art and production, I think, to Azul. Because the production is significantly better.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
The graphic design is simple.
Yeah, I do have to mention this before we go on. Azul is ruined for me in a sense, not just because my wife didn't like it, but I played the giant version at Dice Tower West in 2019, and it's just like, oh, I got to go back to this puny little game after playing like these giant clay tiles. Oh my god, it was amazing.
Yeah, it's worth it. Ease of play is probably Carcassonne. Okay. Stand-up moments. Or game immersion.
Game immersion, I would have to say Carcassonne.
And replay value would be Carcassonne as well.
Carcassonne, yeah.
All right,
so I knew where this was going. I don't disagree with you at all. Just because I won't play Carcassonne with you anymore doesn't mean I don't think it's a great game.
Agreed. I'm glad you see my ways. You'll play it with me eventually one of these days. We'll play like one of the variants, like Hunters and Gatherers. That does enough new stuff that I think you'd dig it.
I want to try the Star Wars one. I'm sorry, I just really do.
That scares me, just rolling dice for combat in a game as smart as Carcassonne.
It just makes me intrigued because I'm like, how is this going to work?
Yeah. Well, it's like, have you heard about the new movie, how they're remaking Titanic, right? Starring Nicolas Cage. It's like, like, I mean, I get the point, but why? You know what I mean?
I'll tell you this, if they remake Titanic, it can't get any worse than the original.
You didn't like the original? I actually liked it. I thought it was an alright movie.
Oh, no, I was bored to tears about it. I'm just sitting there thinking, as someone who's a history major and watching this, I'm like, why? Why turn this into a love story, in all honesty? I wanted a disaster movie, and I got a romance novel.
Okay, fine. Let's just throw a random other comparison. Romeo and Juliet starring Fran Drescher and Pauly Shore. Like that kind of.
Oh, God. I don't think I could sit through it with those annoying voices. Though I have mad respect for Fran Drescher, though.
Mercutio, what's happening, bro?
Oh, my God, we're going off the rails again.
Oh, goodness. That's one of the best things we've came up with on this podcast, in my opinion.
I wouldn't say the best thing.
One of my
Maybe
favorites
the most
now.
obscene thing we've came up with.
Mercutio, what's happening, bro? All right. Pandemic versus Carcassonne. How did the other ones vote?
All right, so Azul, our 3 seed, actually was also our third best vote getter with 12, and Reef was the other game with only 1 vote. So even in the votes, it gets left behind.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, how much do you hear people talk about Reef anymore? You really don't. You hear Azul.
Honestly, I saw someone talk about it not too long ago on one of the board gaming Facebook groups I'm in, and they basically mentioned that part is like, did this just die off because no one ever plays it anymore? He was talking about like playing it himself, and I'm like, wow, I totally forgot about that game, and I made this list.
Yeah, maybe that should be an upcoming topic for like, what are games that people forgot about?
Actually,
that you forgot how awesome they were. That's a topic.
That's a topic
to. Yeah. All right. On to our finale. Yeah. Now I want to be fully honest here, in that I want to tell everybody that's listening to this podcast. I don't know if I've brought this up before. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 is the only game that has almost replaced Carcassonne as my favorite game of all time. It really is. There's one reason why Pandemic Legacy Season 1 did not replace Carcassonne, and that's because once the campaign is done, you don't play.
You can't play it again. Yeah. You just have to move on to season. You have to move on to season 2 and season 0.
Yep, which I'm more than halfway through season 0 right now. I think we're going into October of season 0.
If it starts in January, you're over halfway done.
I know. I think we're going into October. That's what I said. I don't know which month that we are going into, so we'll see. Well, Pandemic Legacy Season 1
versus Carcassonne.
You ready for this?
Yeah, and just to let everybody reminder for those who are new to this podcast, we don't pick a side on this one. It is the Cup of Doom is gone. The Coin of Doom has been put away. This one is straight out, which is the better game based off the 5 criteria we've talked about throughout the podcast, including the 6th one, if there's a tiebreaker, fan vote.
That's right. So is there any that immediately stick out to you?
Ease of play, I think, goes to Carcassonne.
Okay. I'll give it that. I do feel it's easier to play, even with like adding on and how simple Pandemic base is. It's still not as simple as Carcassonne base.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that one.
Minimum number of plays for full experience, replay value. This is a weird one. Obviously, minimum number of plays is Pandemic. Expansions is Carcassonne.
Length of time and scaling well, though. I think
the middle one
holds more people.
It does. It holds more people and it's quicker.
Yeah, no. So I think replay value goes to Carcassonne as well.
Yep. Game Immersion, I feel, is the other one that's worth popping up pretty quick.
For me, Game Immersion itself, I would say Pandemic Legacy Season 1. And it goes through, does the game, where we're talking about, does the art fit the theme, the mechanism of this game? And I think right there alone, Chris Quilliams' art just makes this game so much better. The way the graphic design is on that, as well as how you're putting stuff on the board. As well, it does lend itself to a lot of table talk. You are talking about, you're planning your moves. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do. You got to see what's going to happen. As well as those memorable moments. Again, going back to it, when I mentioned it, when I wasn't supposed to be arguing it, that one thing that happens that we always talk about, but we don't want to spoil.
Yeah, there's one really big moment that's hands down one of the most memorable moments of all gaming. I still remember it, and that was many years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And so which ones do we have left? We have Meaningful Choices and...
Meaningful Choice and Art and Production.
Art and Production, okay. Let's go Art and Production. I feel this goes to Pandemic.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, the graphic design, so I can't argue on that part. Without any spoilers, the pieces and components, you know what I'm talking about. Those who have played it know what I'm talking about. That's good, as well as the art. Honestly, it lends itself a lot better to this game than, say, Carcassonne. So, yeah, I can't disagree with you on that.
Yep. Okay. So our last one is meaningful choices. Which one lets you affect other people's long-term strategies?
Well, Carcassonne. Honestly, that you can impact other people's strategies a lot more than you can in Pandemic. In all honesty,
Yeah. Which one has more arbitrary choices? Probably Carcassonne, which would give the
yeah,
point to
because
Pandemic.
honestly, it's the draw of the tile. You don't know what you're doing because you're drawing a tile from blind, and then you got to figure out how you're going to put it on the board among all the other tiles that are already out there.
Now the question is about long-term strategy. Are we talking the full experience? That's tricky.
It really is because the long-term strategy changes throughout the legacy game. Whereas Carcassonne, your long-term strategies you do have to pivot from time to time, especially if you're playing with a jerk.
Yep. Here's the thing. Here's going to be my counter argument. Both of them have a random drawing element to it. In Pandemic, you're drawing the cards off the top of the deck. That'll be the city cards that you need to trade in. In Carcassonne, you're drawing the top tile or drawing a tile out of a bag and playing whatever you get. They both have that random element. The slight nod goes to Pandemic because on the infection deck, when an epidemic happens, you reshuffle those, and you know generally what's going to happen,
Yeah,
and
what
you
cities are
know
in
to
that?
plan for that.
Yeah, I think that
For
it makes the
Carcassonne, I mean, there's not really much planning on that,
yeah exactly.
which means that I think that point goes to Pandemic.
All right, so that
That
gives
makes
it
it 3 to
meaningful
2.
choice. Yep.
Meaningful choice. So Pandemic Legacy wins the best game with Chris Quilliams art.
I can't disagree with this.
I don't either.
All right, so breaking down 8 games and coming out with our top one that has their best Chris Quilliam art, and I can't disagree because, in all honesty, that art is so good in this game, and it affects the way this game is played too, based on the cards
Mm-hmm.
as well as your files, as well as the stickers that go on the board. I think it's really well done.
Absolutely. So, congratulations to Z-Man Games, Pandemic Legacy, Rob Davio, our friend, and Matt Leacock, brilliant, brilliant designers, and Chris Quilliams bringing that game to life, really. So, I'm sure he wasn't just the only one, but I know he had his hand in it, and he made some great art for it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say before we sign out?
No, I think that was really well done. It was a great game. A lot of these are really good games, so have fun with them, honestly.
Fantastic. So, we want to thank you for tuning in. If you ever want to give us a suggestion for future upcoming episodes, you certainly can. Email us at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com.
And as always, he switches it up on us, so you can also get in contact us on our official Twitter account at EBG Podcast 2020.
And if you ever want to join us live, this is the reason I switched it up. In theory, you should be able to join us on twitch.tv/everydayboardgames. We're working on it.
As well as all video re-uploads can be found on YouTube at Everyday Board Games 2020. And if you like what you see, please give us a subscribe. It helps us grow immensely. As well as liking the video and commenting down below which is your favorite game in the list or that fits this category best. Doing this also helps us grow on the platform. As well as all audio versions can be found on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. This includes Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, and Podbean.
So as always, I've been your host, Daniel.
And I've also been your host, Daniel.
Changing it up a bit. And we want to thank you for listening to Everyday Board Games.
Have a good one.